The art of deception, the science behind optical illusions. Optical illusions are images or objects that trick our brains into perceiving something that doesn't quite match reality. When you look at an optical illusion, your brain processes the visual input in a way that doesn't match reality. It's all about how our neurons fire and connect. Take a look at this classic Necker cube. Can you tell which corner is in the foreground? Our brains love to play tricks on us. Let's start with the Gestalt principle. Gestalt principles are a set of rules or principles in psychology that describe how humans naturally perceive and organize visual information into meaningful patterns and structures. See this illusion, which exemplifies the Gestalt principle of proximity. Interestingly, the horizontal lines between these rows of black and white squares appear slanted, even though they are parallel. This occurs because the closely spaced squares within each row create a sense of alignment, while the spacing between rows disrupts this alignment. As a result, the brain perceives the horizontal lines as tilted, even though they are actually parallel. This illusion shows how our brain tends to group elements that are close together, but the presence of differently colored squares in adjacent rows leads to the misperception of horizontal line alignment. This illusion is a classic example of the Gestalt principle of similarity. Here two squares, A and B, are placed on a checkered board. Square B appears to be a different shade of gray than square A, even though they are actually the same color. This illusion occurs because the surrounding black and white checkered pattern tricks our brain into perceiving differences in color and brightness due to the context created by the alternating squares. It demonstrates how our brain naturally groups similar visual elements and can lead to misperceptions based on the surrounding context. This illusion illustrates the Gestalt principle of closure. It tricks the viewer into perceiving a white triangle, even though there are no actual lines outlining it. Instead, three Pac-Man-like shapes are arranged to imply the presence of a triangle with its apexes pointing inward. This illusion demonstrates the brain's natural tendency to complete and recognize shapes by filling in missing information based on the arrangement of suggestive elements. It showcases how our brains seek closure and coherence in visual stimuli, even when the information is incomplete or implied. This illusion illustrates the Gestalt principle of continuity. Here the intriguing aspect is that our brain tends to perceive the black line as continuing smoothly and straight behind the rectangle. However, due to the angle of the rectangle, our perception is deceived, and the continuation of the line appears misaligned. This illusion demonstrates how our brain strives to maintain the continuity of lines and shapes, even when they are interrupted or obstructed. This illusion is a prime example of the Gestalt principle of figure ground. What did you see first, the vase or the faces? Well, your brain switches between seeing the vase as the main object against a dark background and perceiving the dark faces as the figure against a white background. This illusion highlights how our brains distinguish between the main object and its surrounding space, demonstrating the figure ground principle. This optical illusion illustrates the Gestalt principle of symmetry and order. Do you think that the blue lines are parallel? Despite the parallel lines being actually straight and parallel, they appear to be bowed or curved outward, creating the illusion of asymmetry and disorder in the image. This distortion of straight lines into curves disrupts the sense of symmetry and order in the pattern, highlighting how our brains tend to perceive and favor symmetric and orderly arrangements. This is an example of the Gestalt principle of common fate. It features concentric circles with curved lines that create the illusion of movement when you move your gaze across the image. The lines appear to rotate in a consistent direction. The principle of common fate suggests shared motion among the lines, even though they are static. Essentially, this illusion shows how our brain groups and perceives elements that appear to move together, even when there is no actual motion, in line with the common fate principle. When you focus your gaze on any one circle of the image and keep it still, the lines appear to be static and don't show any movement. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty science. The magic behind optical illusions lies in the way our brains interpret visual information. Optical illusions occur when our brain interprets an image or scene in a way that deviates from objective reality. This process begins with sensory input as light enters our eyes and is processed by the retina's photoreceptors. Our brains naturally organize this visual information using Gestalt principles, such as proximity, similarity, closure, etc., which were discussed in the previous part. Top-down processing, influenced by prior knowledge and context, further shapes our perception. Optical illusions often exploit these principles in our brain's tendency to fill in missing information, resulting in illusions like illusory contours and size distortions. Neural processing in specialized brain areas further contributes to how we perceive these phenomena. Ultimately, optical illusions reveal the intricate workings of our visual system and the complex interplay of sensory input, cognitive processing, and neural interpretation.